The elderwood was never silent, but tonight it held its breath. Seren pulled her worn cloak tighter against the autumn chill, her boots crunching through fallen leaves as she walked the forest path alone. Behind her, distant drums echoed from the village square where torches blazed against the night sky. The crimson moonrite had begun. Every unmated female over 18 was required to attend. It was law. It was tradition. It was, according to Varin, her duty to the pack. "You will stand with the others," he had commanded that morning, his cold eyes raking over her like she was livestock at market. "The Alpha King himself attends this year. Perhaps you'll finally be useful to someone." Seren's stomach churned at the memory. The crimson moonrite was nothing more than a parade of flesh, women displayed like wares, while powerful alphas selected their mates. Some called it an honor. Seren called it barbaric. She had slipped away the moment Varen's attention turned elsewhere. The path curved deeper into the elderwood, away from the drums, away from the torchlight, toward the small cottage at the forest's edge where Wren waited. Her sister was too young for the ceremony, thank the spirits. Too young to understand what Seren was protecting her from. A sound stopped her cold. Not the rustle of wind through branches. Not the call of a night bird. Something heavier. Wetter. Breathing. Seren's heart hammered as she turned toward the source. Through the mist that curled between ancient oaks, she saw a shape sprawled across the forest floor. Large. Motionless. A man. Every instinct screamed at her to run. Strange men in the elderwood on the night of a ceremony meant nothing good. He could be a rogue wolf, a criminal, a trap. But then she heard it again, that labored, rattling breath, and her feet moved before her mind could stop them. He lay face down in the dirt and dead leaves, his massive body twisted at an unnatural angle. Even in the darkness, Seren could see he was enormous, broad shoulders stretching the torn fabric of what had once been fine clothing. Dark hair fell across his face, obscuring his features, and beneath him, spreading in a slow pool that caught the moonlight, was blood. So much blood. "Spirits preserve me," Seren whispered, dropping to her knees beside him. She rolled him onto his back with effort, her hands coming away wet and warm. His face was striking even in unconsciousness, strong jaw shadowed with stubble, features that balanced harshness with unexpected elegance. Whoever he was no common villager. Then she saw the wound. Her breath caught in her throat. A gash split his left side from ribs to hip, deep enough that she could see the glint of exposed muscle. But it wasn't the depth that horrified her. It was the color. The flesh around the wound had turned silver black. Dark veins spreading outward like frost across glass. She had never seen anything like it. "What did this to you?" she breathed, pressing her hands against the wound to slow the bleeding. He groaned, a low sound of pure agony that made her chest ache. In the distance, the drums intensified. The ceremony would be reaching its peak now, the moment when the Alpha King made his selection. Varen would be searching for her already, his fury building with every moment she remained absent. If she left now, she might still make it. She could slip into the crowd, claim she had been there all along, and avoid the punishment that awaited those who defied pack law. But the man beneath her hands drew another rattling breath, and Seren knew she wasn't going anywhere. "Hold on," she told him, though he likely couldn't hear her. "Just hold on." She tore strips from her underskirt, packing them against the wound with hands that had done this work 100 times before. She was the village's unofficial healer, the one people came to when they couldn't afford Varen's prices or didn't want him knowing their business. She knew herbs and poultices and the slow, patient work of mending broken bodies, but this wound was beyond herbs. The silver-black discoloration was spreading even as she watched, creeping up toward his heart with terrible purpose. Poison, she realized with cold clarity. Someone had poisoned him, and it was killing him faster than the blood loss. I need to move you, Seren said, gripping his arm. My cottage is close. I have supplies there. Getting him upright was nearly impossible. He was easily twice her weight, his body limp and uncooperative. But desperation gave her strength she didn't know she possessed, and somehow, with his arms slung over her shoulders and her legs screaming in protest, she managed to drag him forward. Every step was agony. His blood soaked through her dress, warm and sticky against her skin. His breathing grew shallower, more ragged, and twice she had to stop when his weight threatened to pull them both to the ground. The cottage appeared through the mist like a beacon, candlelight glowing warm in the window where Wren had left it burning. "Wren!" Seren shouted, her voice cracking. "Open the door!" Her sister appeared instantly, her small face going pale at the sight of them. "Seren? What happened? Who is—" "Help me get him inside, now!" Together, they managed to drag him through the doorway and onto the floor beside the hearth. Wren immediately began stoking the fire while Seren cut away his ruined shirt to expose the full horror of the wound. The silver-black veins had spread further, climbing his chest like dark lightning. His skin was burning hot, fever already raging through his body. And beneath her hands, she could feel his heartbeat faltering, stuttering like a candle flame in the wind. He was dying. Right here on her floor, this stranger was dying, and everything she knew about healing wasn't going to save him. Unless— "No," Seren whispered to herself, her hands trembling. "I can't." But even as she denied it, she felt the familiar stirring in her chest, the gift she had spent her entire life hiding. The curse her mother had warned her about with her dying breath. "Wren." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Go to the back room. Close the door. Don't come out until I tell you." Her sister's eyes widened with understanding. "Seren, you promised you'd never— Go, please." Wren hesitated, her small face torn between fear and trust. Then she turned and fled to the back room, the door clicking shut behind her. Seren placed her hands on the dying man's chest. "Forgive me," she whispered to no one in particular. To him, to herself, to the spirits who had cursed her bloodline with this terrible gift. Then she closed her eyes and let the power flow. The agony hit her like a physical blow. She gasped as his pain flooded into her body, every nerve igniting with borrowed suffering. The wound on his side burned across her own flesh, phantom fire that made her vision white out at the edges. But she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Through the haze of transferred agony, she felt something else. Something vast and ancient and wild stirring beneath the surface of his consciousness. A presence that recognized her touch and reached back with terrifying intensity. "What are you?" The question wasn't spoken aloud, but she heard it anyway, reverberating through her mind in a voice like thunder. Seren's eyes flew open. His eyes were open too, and they were no longer human. They blazed molten gold in the firelight, fixed on her face with predatory focus. His hand shot up, fingers wrapping around her wrist with crushing strength. He spoke then, a single word in a language she didn't recognize, ancient and commanding. "Mate." The word hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning Seren couldn't begin to understand. Those golden eyes held hers for an endless moment, burning with something fierce and desperate. His grip on her wrist tightened until she felt the bones grinding together. Then, as suddenly as he had woken, his eyes rolled back and his hand fell away. His body went limp against the floor, unconscious once more. Seren scrambled backward, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Her wrist throbbed where he had grabbed her, and when she looked down, she saw the faint outline of his fingers already bruising her skin. "What was that?" she breathed. "What are you?" He didn't answer. Couldn't answer. His chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, and the silver-black veins around his wound had stopped spreading. Whatever she had done, whatever connection had formed in that terrifying moment, it had slowed the poison's advance. But it hadn't stopped it. The back door creaked open. "Seren?" Ren's small voice trembled. "Is it safe?" "No," Seren wanted to say. "Nothing about this is safe." "Stay back," she said instead. "He's unconscious, but I need to keep working." Ren crept closer despite the warning, her eyes huge in the firelight. "Your hands," she whispered. They were glowing. "Just like Mama's used to." Seren's throat tightened. Their mother had died when Ren was barely old enough to remember her, burned as a witch by a neighboring village that had discovered her gift. Seren had been 12, old enough to watch, old enough to learn that some abilities were better left hidden. "We don't talk about that," Seren said firmly. "Ever. You know this." "But you saved him?" Ren inched closer to the unconscious stranger, studying his face with innocent curiosity. "He would have died." "He still might." Seren forced herself back to his side, avoiding looking at his face, at those high cheekbones and that strong jaw, and the vulnerability that sleep lent to his features. She needed to focus on the wound, not the man. The silver-black discoloration had retreated slightly, revealing the raw edges of the gash beneath. Still serious, still potentially fatal, but no longer spreading with that terrible purpose. She had bought him time. Now she needed to buy him more. She reached for her basket of supplies with trembling hands, yarrow for bleeding, comfrey for tissue, honey to prevent infection. The familiar work of healing grounded her, pushed back the panic that threatened to overwhelm her. "Who do you think he is?" Ren asked, handing her clean cloths without being asked. "I don't know. His clothes are fine. Or they were." Ren fingered the torn fabric of his shirt. "Feel this weave. This isn't village cloth." She was right. Even ruined, the quality was evident. This man had wealth, status, and the kind of power that didn't end up bleeding out on forest floors, unless someone wanted him dead. "Someone attacked him," Seren murmured, piecing together the evidence. "That wound isn't from an animal, it's too clean. A blade, and the poison." She had seen plenty of wounds in her years of healing. Farming accidents, hunting mishaps, the occasional fight that got out of hand. But she had never seen poison like this. Something designed not just to kill, but to corrupt. "Seren." Ren's voice had gone very quiet. "Look at his arm." Seren followed her sister's gaze and felt her blood turn to ice. On his inner forearm, partially obscured by dried blood, was a mark. Not a scar or a tattoo, but something that seemed to live beneath the skin, dark lines forming an intricate pattern that pulsed faintly in the firelight. The royal mark, the symbol of the Northern Alpha bloodline. "Spirits preserve us," Seren whispered. "He's not just any wolf." She had heard the stories, everyone had. The Northern Pack was the oldest and most powerful in all the territories, ruled by an unbroken line of Alpha Kings stretching back to the first pack. Their mark was legendary, said to appear on the skin of the true heir when he came of age, and tonight, the Alpha King himself was supposed to be attending the Crimson Moon Rite, selecting a mate from among the gathered females. Instead, he was dying on her floor. "Seren, if he dies here..." Ren didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. If the Alpha King died in her cottage, nothing would save them. Not innocence, not explanations, not the truth. Varn would see them burned for this, and he would enjoy doing it. "He's not going to die," Seren said with more conviction than she felt. "Help me bind this wound." They worked together in tense silence, Ren holding the edges of the gash closed while Seren wrapped clean bandages around his torso. His body was a landscape of old scars and hard muscle, evidence of a life spent fighting. But beneath the warrior's exterior, his heartbeat remained weak, his skin too hot, his breathing too shallow. The poison was still inside him. She had slowed it, but she hadn't destroyed it. "It's not enough," Ren said, echoing her thoughts. "The herbs aren't enough." "I know. You have to use your gift again." Really use it like Mama could. Seren's hand stilled on the bandages. You don't know what you're asking. I know he'll die if you don't. Ren's young face was fierce. And I know Mama would have tried. She always tried. Their mother had tried. She had healed a child with fever, drawn the sickness into her own body and burned through it with the light that lived inside her. And someone had seen. Someone had talked. The last time Mama used her full gift, she died for it. Seren said quietly. She died because people found out, not because of the gift itself. Ren grabbed her hand. No one will find out this time, just us, and him. And he's not exactly going to tell anyone, is he? Seren looked down at the unconscious Alpha King. His brow was furrowed even in sleep, as if fighting battles in his dreams. So powerful, so dangerous, and yet right now, utterly helpless, depending on her. Go to the window, she told Ren. Watch for anyone approaching, and no matter what you see or hear, do not interrupt me. Her sister nodded and moved to her post without argument. Seren placed her hands over the wound again, pressing her palms flat against the blood-soaked bandages. She closed her eyes and reached deeper than before, past the surface gift of pain absorption, down to the place where her mother's power had truly lived. Light bloomed behind her eyelids, golden and warm. She pushed it into him, felt it flowing from her hands into his damaged flesh, seeking out the corruption that lurked inside. The poison fought back with vicious intelligence, recoiling from her light like a living thing. She pursued it, burning it away strand by strand, following its dark tendrils through his body. And in that pursuit, she brushed against his consciousness. Images flooded her mind, a great hall filled with wolf banners, blood on snow, a woman with silver hair screaming his name, a blade plunging into his side, wielded by someone he trusted, someone he. Seren gasped as the vision shattered. She could feel him now, truly feel him, not just his body, but his essence. Ancient power coiled beneath his skin, something wild and magnificent and terrifying. The wolf inside him was vast, a creature of moonlight and shadow, and it recognized her light. Recognized it and wanted it. Mine, that thundering voice spoke again, reverberating through her bones. Mine. Found you. Finally found you. Pain exploded through Serene's chest as something shifted inside her, something fundamental changing at the deepest level. She tried to pull back, to sever the connection, but it was too late. Their blood had mingled through the wound, her light had touched his darkness, and somewhere in the space between heartbeats, a bond had formed, ancient, unbreakable, consuming. Seren screamed as the power overwhelmed her, her vision going white, her body convulsing with the force of what was awakening inside her. The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was Ren crying her name. And beneath that, like distant thunder, the Alpha King's heartbeat growing stronger. Seren dreamed of wolves. They surrounded her in an endless moonlit forest, silver and gray and white, their eyes glowing gold in the darkness. She stood among them without fear, as if she belonged there, as if she had always belonged there. One wolf stood apart from the others, massive, black as midnight. His gaze held hers with an intensity that made her soul ache. Mine, he said without speaking. You are mine. She opened her mouth to respond, but the dream shattered like glass. Seren's eyes flew open to morning light streaming through cottage windows. She was lying on her narrow bed, still wearing her blood-stained dress, with no memory of how she had gotten there. She's awake. Ren's face appeared above her, pale with exhaustion but flooded with relief. You've been unconscious for hours. I thought you were going to die. Hours? Seren tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Her body felt wrong, too sensitive, every nerve ending singing with unfamiliar awareness. She could smell the herbs drying in the rafters, hear Ren's heartbeat, and feel the warmth of sunlight on her skin with almost painful intensity. What happened to me? I don't know. You screamed, and then you just collapsed. Right on top of him. Ren bit her lip. I couldn't wake either of you. I thought maybe the poison had spread to you somehow. The poison. The healing. The connection. Serene's memories came flooding back, and with them, a sensation she couldn't explain, an awareness at the edge of her consciousness that hadn't been there before, like a thread connecting her to something beyond herself. Someone. Where is he? She asked, already knowing the answer before Ren could speak. Still by the hearth. But Seren? He's different now. The wound is almost completely closed, and his breathing is normal, like he's just sleeping instead of dying. Ren hesitated. What did you do to him? What had she done? What had they done to each other? Seren pushed herself out of bed on unsteady legs, ignoring her sister's protests. She needed to see him, needed to confirm. That last night had been real, and not some fever dream. He lay exactly where they had left him, stretched out before the dying fire with blankets tucked around his massive frame. But Ren was right. He looked different now. Color had returned to his skin, his breathing deep and even, and when she knelt beside him to check the wound, she found smooth pink scar tissue where torn flesh had been mere hours ago. Impossible. Even with her gift, healing like this should have taken weeks. How? She breathed, her fingers hovering over the newly formed scar. As if in answer, her palm began to tingle. Seren turned her hand over and stared at what she found there. A mark. Dark lines forming an intricate pattern that seemed to live beneath her skin, pulsing faintly with each beat of her heart. It was smaller than the royal mark on his arm, but unmistakably similar. Connected. Seren. Ren's voice was barely a whisper. Your eyes. What about them? Her sister backed away slowly, fear and wonder warring on her young face. They flickered. Just now, when you looked at your hand. They flickered gold. Gold. Like his eyes when they had opened. Like the wolves in her dream. That cannot be, Seren said. But even as she denied it, she felt the truth resonating in her bones. Something had changed last night. Something fundamental and irreversible. She wasn't the same person who had walked into the Elderwood yesterday evening. A low groan drew her attention back to the man on her floor. His brow furrowed, muscles tensing beneath scarred skin. His head turned toward her, nostrils flaring, and even in sleep, his hand reached out to close around her wrist. Not with the crushing strength of the night before, but gently, almost reverently, as if she were something precious, as if she were his. He keeps doing that, Ren said quietly, reaching for you. Every time I tried to move you away from him, he would make this sound, like a growl, and pull you closer. Seren's cheeks heated. She had been lying beside him all night, with his arms around her. I should check his bandages, she said, desperate to focus on something practical. But when she tried to pull her wrist free, his grip tightened. His eyes opened. Clear blue, not gold, human and aware, studying her face with an intensity that made her pulse stutter. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then he spoke. His voice was rough from disuse but deep and rich, wrapping around words in an accent she had never heard. She couldn't understand the language, but the tone was unmistakable. Confusion, wonder, questions. I don't know what you're saying, Seren said softly. His brow furrowed. He tried again, different words this time, but still foreign. The northern dialect, Ren realized. I've heard traders use it at market, but I don't know enough to translate. The stranger looked between them with growing frustration. Then his gaze dropped to where his hand still circled Seren's wrist. He went very still. Slowly, deliberately, he turned her hand over to reveal the mark on her palm. The sound he made was not human. A rumble that started deep in his chest and built into something that vibrated through the floor itself. His eyes lifted to hers, and this time she saw the gold bleeding into the blue, two colors warring for dominance. He raised his other hand and touched her face. The contact sent lightning racing through her veins. She gasped, swaying toward him without meaning to, drawn by that invisible thread that now connected them. His thumb traced her cheekbone, her jaw, the corner of her lips. Each touch left fire in its wake. He spoke again, just one word, the same word from last night. Mate. This time she understood it. Before she could respond, before she could process the implications, a horn sounded in the distance. Then another. Then the thunder of hoofbeats on the road. Wren ran to the window. "Riders!" she gasped. "At least a dozen, and Varen is leading them." Seren's blood went cold. The ceremony. She had missed the Crimson Moon rite, defied Varen's direct order, and now the entire village would know. There would be consequences. Punishments. But she couldn't think about that now. Not with the Alpha King lying exposed on her floor. "Help me get him to the back room," she said urgently. "Seren, there's no time. They're almost here." She was right. Seren could hear the hoofbeats clearly now, could smell the horses and the sweat of men and something else beneath it. Something sharp and threatening. Wolf. Multiple wolves. All of them angry. The stranger struggled to sit up, his jaw tight with determination despite his obvious weakness. He spoke rapidly in his own language, the tone commanding, frustrated. "I don't understand," Seren said helplessly. "I don't—" The cottage door exploded inward. Varen stood in the doorway, his lean face twisted with cold fury. Behind him crowded village guards and pack enforcers, their eyes hard, their hands on weapons. "There she is," Varen said softly. "Our little healer, the one who thought she was too good for pack law." His gaze moved past her to the stranger on the floor, and Seren watched recognition bloom in his eyes. Fear followed quickly, then something else. Calculation. Well, Varen murmured. "This is an interesting development." He stepped into the cottage, his wolves following close behind, and smiled. "I think you have something that belongs to me, girl." Varen's wolves spread through the cottage like poison through blood. They overturned her herb baskets, kicked through her carefully organized supplies, their eyes hungry for violence. "Don't touch her," Seren said, stepping between them and Wren. "She's just a child. A child who helped you harbor a fugitive." Varen's cold gaze swept over the stranger. Or should I say, a very valuable guest. The Alpha King spoke then, his voice low and dangerous despite his condition. Seren couldn't understand the words, but the threat in them was unmistakable. Even wounded, even outnumbered, he radiated power that made Varen's wolves shift uneasily. "He doesn't seem to like you much," Seren observed. Varen's jaw tightened. "The Northern King's opinions are irrelevant. What matters is that I found him, saved him from whatever enemy left him bleeding in our forest." His smile was sharp as a blade. "The Northern Pack will be very grateful. You didn't save him? I did." "And who would believe that?" Varen stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper meant only for her. "A village healer with no status, no family, no protection? Or the pack leader who discovered their precious king and nursed him back to health?" Seren's hands clenched at her sides. "You would steal credit for—" "I would take what is mine by right." His hand shot out, gripping her chin with bruising force. "Just as I will take you eventually, once you learn your place." A sound erupted from behind her. Not a word, but a roar of pure rage that shook dust from the rafters. Seren spun to see the Alpha King on his feet, swaying but upright, his eyes blazing gold. He moved faster than should have been possible for a man who had been dying hours ago. One moment Varen held her chin. The next, Varen was against the wall with the stranger's hand around his throat. The Alpha King spoke in a voice that resonated with supernatural authority. Though Seren couldn't understand the words, every wolf in the room dropped to their knees, heads bowed and bodies trembling. Even Varen, suspended against the wall, went pale with terror. "What did he say?" Ren whispered. Seren shook her head, but she felt the answer resonating through the strange bond between them. "Mine. Touch what is mine again, and I will end your bloodline." Hoofbeats thundered outside. More wolves, Seren realized, but these felt different, stronger. The cottage door, already hanging from one hinge, was pushed aside as new figures entered. Warriors, a dozen of them at least, wearing the silver and black of the northern pack. Their leader, a scarred man with iron-gray hair, took in the scene with sharp eyes before dropping to one knee. "My king," he said in accented common tongue, "we have searched everywhere. When you disappeared from the ceremony—" "Betrayed," the Alpha King said, the word thick with his accent but understandable. His first conscious word in her language, she realized. The mate from that fevered night had been pure instinct. He released Varen, who slid to the floor gasping. "Lysara's blade, poison." The scarred warrior's face darkened. "We will find her, make her answer." The king swayed, his burst of strength fading. Two of his warriors rushed to support him, but his eyes found Seren's across the chaos. So much passed in that look. Gratitude, confusion, something deeper and more desperate that made her chest ache. "The woman," he said to his captain, still holding her gaze. "Bring her." "My king." One of the warriors stepped forward, his expression troubled. "We cannot bring a village woman to court. The council will not—" "The girl stays here," Varen interrupted, having regained some composure. "She is under my jurisdiction, my pack's protection." The Alpha King's golden eyes flickered to the pack leader with undisguised hatred. But even Seren could see the calculation happening behind that fierce gaze. He was weak, wounded, far from home with enemies unknown. Starting a war with a local pack over a healer he had known for mere hours would be politically disastrous, even if every instinct screamed at him to burn this village to ash. "Theron." The scarred warrior spoke the name quietly, urgently. "We must go. Your wounds need proper treatment." "Theron." So that was his name. Seren tucked it away like something precious. "Seren." Her name in his voice was a revelation. Rough and accented, but tender in a way that made her breath falter. He must have heard Ren say it earlier. "I will return." A promise. A vow. Something unbreakable passing between them. Then his warriors were guiding him out, surrounding their king with protective formation, and Seren was left standing in her ruined cottage with Varen's fury and her sister's fear. "This isn't over," Varen hissed, straightening his clothes. "Whatever hold you have on the Northern King, I will discover it, and I will use it." He swept out, his wolves following, leaving destruction in their wake. In the silence that followed, Ren crept to Seren's side. "He said he would return. He did. Do you believe him?" Seren pressed her hand to her chest, where that strange thread still hummed with connection despite the growing distance between them. "Yes," she whispered. "I do." 15 days passed like 15 lifetimes. Seren tried to return to normal. She gathered herbs, treated the villagers who still dared to visit her, pretended that nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The dreams came every night now. She ran through moonlit forests beside a massive black wolf, their bodies moving in perfect synchrony. She stood in grand halls draped with silver banners while he spoke words she couldn't understand, but felt in her soul. She lay in his arms while he traced the mark on her palm and called her his heart, his fate, his everything. She woke from these dreams gasping, her body burning with need, her hand pressed to the mark that pulsed with increasing intensity. And the pain was getting worse. It started as an ache in her bones, easily dismissed as exhaustion. but it grew sharper each day, spreading through her muscles, her joints, and her very blood. Sometimes she would collapse without warning, her body seizing as if trying to tear itself apart. "It's the bond," she told herself during the worst of it, curled on the floor while Ren pressed cool cloths to her forehead. Incomplete, calling to its other half. But knowing the cause didn't make the suffering stop. "You're dying," Ren said one morning, her young face old with worry. "Something is happening to you, and you're dying." "I'm not dying," Seren lied. But that night, when she looked in the small mirror above the basin, she saw the truth. Her skin had grown pale, almost translucent. Her eyes flickered gold at random moments, and spreading across her collarbone, faint but unmistakable, were dark lines like silver-black veins, just like the poison that had nearly killed Theron. "What's happening to me?" she whispered to her reflection. The reflection had no answers. On the 15th day, Lysera came. Seren was gathering herbs at the edge of the elderwood when she felt it, a presence that made her newly sensitive instincts recoil with warning. She straightened, her basket clutched to her chest, as a woman emerged from the forest shadows. She was beautiful in the way that blades are beautiful. Sharp features, silver-white hair cascading over leather armor, eyes the color of winter ice. Everything about her screamed predator. "So," Lysera said, her voice like silk over steel, "you're the little healer who has caused so much trouble." Seren held her ground despite every nerve screaming to flee. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" Lysera circled her slowly, studying her the way a cat studies a mouse. 15 days ago, the Alpha King disappeared from the Crimson Moonrite. He was supposed to select me as his mate that night, a union that would have joined two great bloodlines and solidified my family's power for generations. Her hand shot out, gripping Seren's wrist and twisting until the mark on her palm was visible. Instead, he shows up half dead in some backwater village, raving about fate and destiny and a human woman who carries his mark. Lysara's ice-blue eyes blazed with fury. "A human? Do you have any idea how humiliating that is?" "I didn't ask for this," Seren gasped, the grip on her wrist sending pain shooting up her arm. "I just tried to save his life. And in doing so, you ruined mine." Lysara released her with a shove that sent Seren stumbling. "The Northern Council is in chaos. Half of them want to drag you back and complete the bond. The other half want to pretend you don't exist and force Theron to mate with me anyway." Seren's heart lurched. "And Theron? What does he want?" Something flickered across Lysara's perfect features. Frustration, perhaps even fear. "He refuses to speak of it. Refuses to eat, to sleep, to leave his chambers. The great Alpha King, reduced to a lovesick fool over a woman he knew for a single night." A lovesick fool? Was it possible? Did he feel this same agonizing pull, this same frantic longing that was slowly killing her? "The bond," Seren said slowly. "It's affecting him too." "Of course it is." Lysera's laugh was bitter. "That's what a mate bond does. It consumes everything until it's either completed or one of you dies." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "And I'm here to make sure it's the latter option." Seren saw the blade. Too late. Pain exploded through her side as Lysara's dagger found its mark. Not deep, not fatal, but coated with something that burned like liquid fire in her veins. "The same poison that should have killed Theron," Lysara hissed. "Modified. Stronger. By tomorrow, you'll be dead, and the bond will die with you." Seren collapsed, the world spinning around her. Through the haze of agony, she saw Lysara walking away, disappearing into the forest without a backward glance. The pain was immense, but beneath it, something else stirred. That thread connecting her to Theron pulled taut, and across the miles she felt him respond. Felt his sudden terror, his rage, his frantic urgency to reach her. "Hold on." The words echoed through her mind, carried on the bond like a lifeline. "Hold on, I'm coming." Darkness swallowed her before she could respond. Serene woke to the sensation of movement. She was being carried, cradled against a warm chest, while trees blurred past at impossible speed. Wolves ran alongside them, silver and gray shapes flowing through the moonlit forest. "She's awake," someone said. "My king, she's—" "I know." That voice, rough with exhaustion and fear, but unmistakably his. Seren forced her eyes to focus and found Theron's face above her, his jaw tight, his blue eyes flickering gold with barely contained wolf. "You came," she managed through cracked lips. "Always." His arms tightened around her. "I will always come for you." She wanted to say more, to ask how he had found her, and how they had traveled so far so fast, why she could suddenly understand his words. But the poison was still spreading, still burning, and consciousness was a slippery thing. "The healer waits at the castle," someone reported. "But my king, the poison—" "She will not die." Theron's voice brooked no argument. "I forbid it." Through the haze of pain, Seren almost laughed, as if death cared about royal commands. But then his hand pressed against her wound, and she felt something flow from him into her. Power, life force, the essence of whatever ancient magic lived inside an Alpha King. It pushed back the poison's advance, not curing it, but holding it at bay. "You're weakening yourself," she whispered. "I would give everything I have to keep you breathing." His forehead pressed against hers, his breath warm on her face. "Everything I am." The sincerity in his words broke something inside her. Or perhaps it healed something that had always been broken. Either way, tears spilled down her cheeks as she surrendered to the darkness. The last thing she felt was his lips against her hair, and his voice murmuring words in his ancient language. Words that sounded like prayer. Castle Valdris rose from the northern mountains like something from legend, all ancient stone and silver spires, gleaming beneath a winter sun. Seren stared at it through the window of the chamber where she had woken, unable to reconcile its magnificence with her presence inside it. "You've been unconscious for 3 days," said the elderly woman who had introduced herself as Mavis, royal healer of the Northern Pack. "The poison was beyond anything I've encountered. If the king hadn't shared his essence with you during the journey—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. "Where is he?" Seren asked. The question had been burning on her tongue since she first opened her eyes. Mavis hesitated. "The king has been occupied. Council matters. The situation with Lady Lysara. She tried to kill me." "Yes." The healer's face was carefully neutral. "She has been detained. But her family is powerful, and there are those who believe she acted in the Pack's best interests." Seren absorbed this information with growing dread. "They think removing me would be beneficial." "You are a human who has accidentally bonded with the most powerful alpha in living memory. There are many who find that problematic." "Including Theron?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Mavis's expression softened with something like sympathy. "The king has not left his chambers since bringing you here. He refuses visitors, refuses food, and refuses everything except updates on your condition." She paused. "He blames himself for what happened to you." "That's ridiculous. He didn't poison me. Lysara—" "The bond," Mavis interrupted gently. "He blames himself for the bond, for what it is doing to you." Seren's hand moved instinctively to her chest, where that golden thread still pulsed. "What is it doing to me?" For a long moment, Mavis simply looked at her with ancient, knowing eyes. Then she sat heavily in the chair beside the bed. "What do you know of mate bonds, child?" "Almost nothing. Among our kind, they are sacred. When two souls recognize each other as mates, a bond forms that connects them forever. It is the highest form of love our people know." Mavis paused. "But you are not our kind. I'm human. You were human. The healer's gaze dropped to Seren's palm, where the mark pulsed faintly. The bond doesn't care about species. When your blood entered his wound, when your gift touched his essence, something recognized something. Now you are changing. Changing into what? That is the question, isn't it? Mavis rose and moved to the window. A completed mate bond would transform you fully. You would become one of us, bound to Theron for eternity. You would share his power, his life force, and his very soul. Seren's pulse quickened. And if the bond remains incomplete? Then the transformation continues without anchor. Your human body fights what it is becoming, and the war destroys you from inside. Mavis turned to face her. You have days, perhaps a week, before that war ends with your death. The words hit Seren like physical blows. Days. A week. After everything, after surviving the poison and the journey and Lysara's attack, she was still dying. There must be something, she said. Some way to stop it. There are 2 paths. Complete the bond and embrace the transformation, or? Mavis's face was grave. Or sever the bond entirely. Theron has been researching ancient rituals, ways to break a mate connection without killing both parties. If successful, you would return to being fully human. The transformation would reverse. You would live. Hope and devastation warred in Seren's chest. He wants to break our bond? He wants to save your life. If that requires sacrificing the bond, sacrificing his chance at a true mate. The healer's voice broke slightly. You must understand, child. For an alpha to find his fated mate is the greatest blessing our people know. And for him to willingly sever that connection, it is the greatest sacrifice. The door opened before Seren could respond. Ren burst in, her small face alight with joy. Seren, you're awake. Ren? Seren caught her sister in a fierce embrace. How are you here? The king's wolves came for me. They said you needed me, so I came. Ren pulled back, studying her face with worry. You look terrible. Thank you for that. I mean it. You look like you're dying. I am dying. The words came out before Seren could stop them. Ren's face crumpled. There has to be something. Your gift? Can't you heal yourself? My gift is part of the problem. Seren took her sister's hands. But there might be a way. A ritual to break the bond and stop the transformation. Break the bond? Ren frowned. But doesn't that mean losing your connection to the Alpha King? Yes. And you would be okay with that? After all those dreams, all that longing? Ren's young eyes saw far too much. I heard you crying his name at night, Seren. I saw how you looked when he left. You love him. The truth of it struck Seren silent. She loved him. This man she had known for mere hours. This Alpha King with his golden eyes and fierce protectiveness, and the way he said her name like it was holy. She loved him, and he was planning to erase their connection to save her life. I need to see him, Seren said, throwing off her blankets. My lady, you're too weak. Mavis started. I need to see him now. She made it halfway to the door before her legs gave out. Ren caught her, small arms straining under her weight, and together they lowered her to the floor. The mark on Seren's palm blazed with sudden intensity. Through the bond, she felt something fracture within her being, a decision being made, a ritual beginning. No, she breathed. He's doing it now. He's trying to break the bond. Pain erupted through her chest as the golden thread began to fray. She screamed, clutching at the connection with everything she had, but it was slipping away. Theron's presence at the edge of her consciousness flickered like a dying candle. And then, silence. The bond went dark. The silence was worse than the pain. Seren lay on the cold stone floor, gasping for breath, her hand pressed against her chest where the bond had lived. The absence was devastating. A void where warmth had been. Emptiness where his presence had anchored her. Seren. Ren's voice came from far away. Seren, what's happening? He did it, she whispered. He severed the bond. But even as she said it, something didn't feel right. The transformation should be reversing. The pain should be fading. Instead, the agony intensified, her body convulsing as the war inside her reached its peak. It's not working, Mavis said, her voice sharp with alarm. The bond was too deep. Severing it didn't stop the transformation, it just removed her anchor. She's dying, Seren finished. I'm dying anyway. She had known. Some part of her had always known. The bond between them had been too profound, too fundamental to simply cut away. Theron had tried to save her, and in doing so, had condemned them both. Through the chaos of her failing body, Seren felt something else. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. Theron's pain. The bond was severed, but she could still sense him. Not through magic, not through supernatural connection, but through something older and simpler. Love. Where is he? Seren demanded, forcing herself to her knees. The ritual chamber, Mavis said, in the mountain beneath the castle. But my lady, you cannot possibly… Take me there. You'll die before you reach him. Then I'll die trying. Seren met the healer's eyes with fierce determination. I will not let him destroy himself for me, not when there's another way. What other way? The bond is broken. There is no… The bond can be reformed. Seren rose on shaking legs, her body screaming in protest. You said a completed bond would stabilize the transformation. If I can reach him, if we can form a new connection before her body tore itself apart, before the war inside her ended in her death. Such a thing has never been done, Mavis breathed. No one has ever reformed a severed mate bond. Then I'll be the first. The journey through Castle Valdris was a nightmare of endless corridors and spiraling stairs. Seren leaned heavily on Ren, each step an act of will, each breath a victory. Her body was failing. She could feel it happening, organs shutting down, muscles tearing, bones cracking under the strain of an incomplete transformation. The silver-black veins had spread across her entire torso, climbing her neck, reaching for her heart. Minutes. She had minutes at most. There, Ren gasped, pointing to a massive stone door carved with wolf symbols. I can hear chanting. Seren pressed her palm against the stone. Even through the barrier, she could feel him, his grief, his guilt, his absolute certainty that he had killed the one person he was destined to love. I need to get inside, she said. It's sealed with alpha magic. Only the king can… Seren didn't wait for her sister to finish. She pressed both hands against the door and reached for the power that had been building inside her since that first night. Not her healing gift, but something newer, something that had been born from the collision of her magic and Theron's essence. Something wolf. Golden light blazed from her palms. The stone door shuddered, cracked, and exploded inward. The ritual chamber was vast, carved from the living heart of the mountain. Torches lined the walls, casting flickering shadows over the dozen council members who stood in a circle around the central altar. And on that altar, surrounded by ancient symbols drawn in blood, knelt Theron. He looked destroyed. His skin was ashen, his body trembling with the after-effects of severing their bond. Blood dripped from his palms where he had cut himself for the ritual, pooling on the stone beneath him. But it was his eyes that broke her heart. Empty. Hollow. The eyes of a man who had lost everything that mattered. Theron. His head snapped up at her voice. For a moment he simply stared, as if unable to believe what he was seeing. Then recognition flooded his features, followed by horror. No. He stumbled to his feet, swaying. His common tongue was broken, halting, but she understood every word. Or perhaps understanding had nothing to do with language anymore. You should be healing. The bond is severed. Why are you… dying? Seren walked toward him, her legs threatening to give out with every step. Because you can't sever something this profound. Because what exists between us goes deeper than magic. Stay back. His voice cracked. I've done enough damage. I won't. You won't what? Let me choose my own fate? She reached him, standing so close she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. You made this decision without me. You decided that a life without you was better than risking death with you. I was trying to save you. By destroying us both? Tears spilled down her cheeks. I felt it when the bond broke, Theron. I felt your grief. You weren't saving me. You were punishing yourself. His composure shattered. I bit you without consent. I marked you, changed you, took away your humanity without asking. What kind of mate does that? What kind of king? A dying man acting on instinct. Seren cupped his face in her trembling hands. A good man who has spent 15 days torturing himself for something that wasn't his fault. Seren, I chose to save you that night, she continued. I chose to use my gift, knowing it might expose me. I chose to let our blood mingle because some part of me already knew what you were to me. She pressed her forehead against his. And I choose you now, not because of fate or magic or mate bonds, because I love you. The words hung between them, simple and earth-shattering. You love me, he repeated, as if the concept was foreign. Yes. She smiled despite the pain consuming her body. Inconvenient timing, I know. His laugh was broken, beautiful. My heart. The endearment emerged in his own language first, then again in hers. My stubborn, impossible heart. Reform the bond, she said. Complete what we started. If it fails, you'll die. I'm dying anyway. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. But I would rather die in your arms, trying, than live a single day in a world without you. Theron's golden eyes searched her face, looking for doubt, for fear, for any sign that she didn't mean every word. He found none. The council, one of the observers started. Can go to hell, Theron said without looking away from Seren. She is my mate, my choice, my everything. He lowered his head, baring his throat in the ancient gesture of surrender. Claim me, he whispered. Make me yours as I have made you mine. Seren didn't hesitate. She pressed her lips to his throat, feeling his pulse race beneath her mouth. Then, guided by instinct older than thought, she bit down. His blood flooded her tongue, hot and sweet and electric with power. The world exploded into sensation as the bond reformed, not as a single thread this time, but as 1,000 connections weaving their souls together. She felt him. Not just his presence, but his memories, his fears, his hopes, his overwhelming love for her. She felt the wolf inside him rise to meet the wolf awakening inside her. And she felt the transformation complete. The pain vanished, replaced by strength she had never known. Her senses sharpened until she could hear every heartbeat in the chamber, smell the mountain stone and torch smoke, and the unique scent that was purely Theron. When she finally released him, her eyes blazed gold. Mine, she growled, the word vibrating with supernatural resonance. Yours, he answered, pulling her into his arms. Always and forever yours. Around them, the council members dropped to their knees, recognizing what they had witnessed. Not just a mating, but the birth of something new. A human woman transformed into an alpha queen by the sheer force of her love. Seren, Ren's voice cut through the moment. Seren turned to see her sister standing in the destroyed doorway, tears streaming down her face but a brilliant smile lighting her features. I'm okay, Seren said, opening her arms. Ren ran to her, and she caught her sister in a fierce embrace. I'm better than okay. Theron's hand came to rest on Ren's head, gentle despite its size. Little wolf, he said softly. You are pack now. You are family. Ren looked up at him with shining eyes. Does this mean I get to live in a castle? Laughter rippled through the chamber, breaking the solemnity of the moment. Seren pulled both of them close, Her mate and her sister, her old life and her new one merging into something whole. Through the bond, she felt Theron's joy resonating with her own, felt his wonder at finally having what he had never dared to hope for. "Come," he said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Let me show you your home." Home. The word had never meant much to Seren before. A cottage at the forest's edge, a life of hiding and fear and always looking over her shoulder. But as she walked, through Castle Valdris with Theron's hand in hers and Ren dancing ahead of them, she understood that home had never been a place. It was this. It was them. It was where she had always been meant to be.